And what means that they've maldistributed almost 100% of all this nation's land, resources, rights, privileges, business, and controls of all levels of government into the hands of the dominant white society. Black folk haven't got a snowball's chance of ever being a competitive people. You might struggle if it lasts another 2 or 3 years, but it's going to wipe you out pretty soon. You came out of slavery in 1860 having 1/2 of 1% of this nation's wealth. Here you are 150 years later, guess what? You still own 1/2 of 1% of the wealth. And in a nation, in a race-based society, it is what you own and control that determines your equal opportunities and your rights and privileges. It has nothing darn thing to do with civil rights. That's a waste of time. It doesn't have anything to do with the voting, but that's an intellectual masturbation process.
Mm-hmm.
They ain't gonna do any good. What you need is own and control wealth and power.
They said intellectual masturbation. I heard you say that earlier on something I was watching. You said they get off, but it does nothing for them.
You got it down pat, bro. That's like you starving to death. Somebody give you a steak, you rub it outside your stomach. They ain't gonna do you any good. They ain't doing a damn thing for you. I said no. Quit playing with black folk. Mm-hmm. So when I left the president, I ran a campaign. I guess. Well, let me go back. I guess I've been very privileged in all my years. Now I'm 85 now, so I reached the peak. I don't have to get along with anybody damn body anymore.
Man, that's a beautiful feeling.
Yes, sir. That's one of the enrichments of age. But I decided after all the years of playing politics, I guess I was privileged in the sense of being the only black in the nation that ever was a campaign manager, not in a campaign manager, but a campaign manager for governors, for presidents, for attorney generals, for state legislators, and congressmen. No other blacks had that. I felt for that reason I had an obligation to get out here and do something for black folk. And so I don't play any games with black folk. Most of the friends I know that you all probably have on your shows, they're just trying to get some self-indictment elevation. I don't need it.
And what did you think about Kamala Harris and Cory Booker? I know you said voting is an illusion.
They're probably nice people. They ain't gonna do anything for black folk. You say I have yet to this day ever heard or seen not one president, not one candidate for public office ever get up and say, here's what I'm gonna do for black folk. That violates the entire premise of politics. Politics is a process that decides who's gonna get what benefits out of life. It's based on a very simple premise of quid pro quo. Politics, as you know it now, never existed until about the 1500s. And it says we will determine who gets what blessings and who suffers. And so, consequently, nobody's ever stood up and said, here's what black folk are going to get. You're talking about the candidates. The first thing these black folks should be asking is not what candidate you're going to represent or going to vote for. Who cares? What you should be asking is, what are you going to get? What are you voting for?
That's right. What are you going to get in exchange for your vote?
That's right. What do you get? What are you voting for? What are you going to get?
Mm-hmm.
If you ain't getting a damn thing, why are you voting? And see, black, and not one candidate, in all the years I ran campaigns, not one candidate or one president or one party, political party, neither the Republican or the Democratic Party, Libertarian Party, the Green Party, not one has ever promised that if I get the black vote, here's what I'm going to do for black folk.
It's the first year it's ever happened, and I think the only reason it's happened is because of all the hell that's being raised on social media. And, like a lot of times when these presidential candidates come up here, we ask them specifically, what is your black agenda?
See, you're right. And what did she say to you?
Well, I mean, they all have little things here and there. The only person I've seen have a real live black agenda is Mayor Pete. He has the Douglas Plan, which is based off Frederick Douglass.
Okay, right. And see, what most of them, what they can do is give you that old game that they used during the formation of this country in 1789. Mm-hmm. And they met up in Philadelphia and says, we're gonna build this nation, and we're gonna create a document that make us the cradle of democracy. It's gonna be a constitution. And they said, and we're gonna make this a land of opportunity and freedom for everybody.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So they met in Philadelphia for a whole week. You know what they did for a whole week? They closed the doors and put the guards on the windows in Philadelphia, and said, "Now we got to write this Constitution, but we got a problem now. If we're going to offer this as a land of opportunity for everybody, isn't it inconsistent and hypocritical for us to be getting ready to enslave all these damn black folk we're bringing into the country? They said, how are we going to get past that? They said, well, what we'll do, we'll run a game on them. They've been running that same game ever since. What we'll do in the Constitution, we use very broad and ambiguous terms. And certain terms, certain of those broad ambiguous terms would apply to whites and certain apply to black folk. So in the United States Constitution says, we the people, all the people, all God got a God-given right to life, living in pursuit of happiness. Initially, it wasn't even happiness; it was really a property, because black folk are going to be property. And so that's what it was structured on. And they said, well, what about black folk? When they read the Constitution, they said, what we'll do, let's use other words. Let's use code words like those who are indebted, those who are in bondage, those who are property, those are 3/5 of a human being,
Mm-hmm.
those who are equal to a field animal. And our people never figured that out. So you got all our civil rights leaders running around for years and running for public office like you're talking about we got rights. You don't have any rights in the Constitution. There's no rights for blacks in the Constitution. The United States Constitution in 1789 was strictly the first affirmative action plan in the country, strictly and solely for whites. And those who later on could pass for whites. That's what it's about. And black folk are the only people in this country that can't pass for white. And when I left the White House with President Carter in 1970, the Office of Management and Budget says, we're going to now make everybody in here that comes into the country, we're going to start qualifying them as being white. See, up to 1970, as an example, Hispanics were always white. They were always whites. But what happened in 1970, I was over education for the state of Florida at that time, and I have the dubious honor of writing the second affirmative action plan in the United States, but the first one for black folk. When I wrote the affirmative action plan, it was approved by the governor and the state cabinets, the systems, but not. I didn't write it for minorities and poor folk, those broad terms, people of color, and for diversity, and for gays and lesbians and midgets and humpbacks and one-eyed people. I wrote it strictly for black folk.
So listen, is there any way that blacks can correct the resource imbalance?
Yeah, you can. See, and you start playing the game. That's why my second book, I wrote the first book called Black Labor, White Wealth, and which Ebony Jet calls the second Bible for black folk around the world. It sells all over Europe and into Africa. That was to show you every technique, every trick, every custom, every policy that the major white society used to lock black folk into a lowest level of a real life monopoly game. And they maldistributed all the resources, period. It showed us that in very graphic terms. I think you got to have a copy of that bottom book over there.
Yes, sir. Black Labor, White Wealth.
That's what that was for.
We got Dirty Little Secrets. We got more Dirty Little Secrets.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Now, and this is what they call it around the world. They call this the second Bible for black folk. It shows you exactly what happened to you, and that you have no rights. And power. I follow that with Powernomics.
Oh, it's behind you.
Yeah.
There you go. Boom.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And this is a national plan. What was the question you just asked me? I ran past it. You asked me.
How do we catch up as black folk?
How you catch up? This is a national plan for black folk. It says a national plan to empower black Americans, period. And what you first thing you got to do, to make it long story short, you got to have what you never had in this country. That's a group self-interest. You've been inculcated and coordinated and brainwashed and believing that you got some obligation and responsibility to save the world. You got to save everybody first before you save yourself. Now, I'm a pilot. I don't fly anymore. I'm too old to be flying. But one of the first things I would tell people on my plane as passengers, the first thing you do, if we lose cabin pressure at 30,000 feet, we don't have any cabin pressure at night over 10,000 feet. If you lose cabin pressure, a panel over your head will fall down.
Right.
When that mask falls down, the first thing you all should be doing is putting the mask on yourself. Quit trying to save everybody. Why has always got black folk marching trying to save it? We're marching for gays. We're marching for women. We're marching for poor people. We're marching for the handicapped. And yet you only control 1/2 of 1% of wealth. You haven't got a snowball's chance. And in the end of slavery, as I said, you had 1/2 of 1%. Guess what? The average white person at that point in time had 3,500 times more wealth than the average black. That means that 99% of everything in this country was in the white society. And it's still in the white society. I don't care from Vermont all the way to California, San Diego. 98% of everything of value is locked in the white society. 87% of it's frozen, locked into white society. You can't get it out. So all you got to compete for is about 13% is up for grabs. And if black folk don't learn how to compete for that 13%, you are through. And right now, that's what's happening around the world. You see all these, we're going to implode in this country. Same thing happening in Germany with the Jews. And there was a book out called Hitler's Willing Execution that said the same thing. When certain kind of things began to happen to you as a group, you better be very careful. And they wrote that as a big, thick book, and about what's going to happen. And they started exterminating the Jews. Why? Because you got a group now that you all don't know about called the Council of 300. What they want to do now is say, we got too many people on the earth, and we're going to start losing resources. There won't be enough resources left. We got water. We're going to have water shortages coming. And when water shortages come, what follows that is food shortages. Right now, 20% of the world is suffering from water shortages. We're going to start having water shortages in this country. We have water shortages and have food shortages. So what the council and all these rich people on the earth are saying is that we got to start getting rid of some of these people. We're going to start with the non-producers. Now, who are the non-producers in America? The only people in America that produces absolutely nothing except sweat is black folk.
That's real, though. I get what you're saying. I feel you.
No, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, right now, all of our people that are supposed to be successful, guess what? The only thing they produce is sweat. They're running with balls, football, basketball, baseball, tennis ball, golf ball, singing and dancing, producing sweat. Nobody's buying any damn sweat. And how are you going to feed yourself?
Right.
You don't produce anything. We don't have any industries. And we had a chance to get industries in 1700s when the Industrial Revolution went through Europe. Black folk were slaves. When the Industrial Revolution went through America in the 1800s, we were still enslaved. We own and control absolutely nothing.
You don't think that's changing now a little bit?
Oh, man, no. It's getting worse. As a matter of fact, let me give you a difference. Right now, we got all these people that you're running for public office talking about. We gotta look for eradicate poverty. You cannot eradicate poverty. Poverty is a fixed. It's a given. It's a given. You cannot eradicate poverty. Why? Because just like you can't eradicate, you got an up, you got a down, you got an in, you got an out. That is a fix. You cannot change it. And they always got people want to eradicate poverty. What you should be saying is leave poverty alone and go down and try to figure out how to get black folk out of poverty. Don't be trying to eradicate poverty. Leave poverty alone and get blacks out. And see, so what we need to have more equality. On a race-based society, you cannot have equality. It's impossible. The whole point of a race is a contest.
That's right.
See, a race, you all don't go to the Kentucky Derby to try to have all the horses being equal, do you?
No, you want one to win.
You got it again. You're a smart man. you want to see who comes in first, second, or place.
Right.
And so, yet, in a race-based society, why is it called a race? Race never started, never existed on the earth until the 1500s. See, and that's when it started. That's where racism comes from. They didn't pick racism just out of thin air.
It's a social construct.
It's a social construct.
Yeah.
It's a social construct. They started. What we're going to do now that Columbus discovered America? You got in 1492. We got a lot of land over there. It's pretty much vacant, and we need to go over there and try to get that land. And what they said is, well, let's go back. How are we going to do it? And they said, well, let's see. Back in about 1446, we had a guy named Henry the Navigator that went around the coast of Africa, and he picked up about 16 blacks, Africans, and brought them back to Europe, gave them to the Pope in the Vatican. And the popes that we use is as slaves. And so the Vatican used blacks as slaves. That was one of the first ones, from about 1446 up to about 1488. Then Pope Innocent came out and said, well, having these people as slaves, that's a good thing. And so why is that important now? Because you see, the Fox Channel be telling you all, while blacks complain about being slaves, we've always had slaves. No, you have not. You may have had slaves, but not based on skin color. And Pope Innocent came out and says, in the future, don't enslave anybody based on a traditional manner. You can only enslave people for being either a prisoner of war or for personal indebtedness or religious persecution. He said, let's skip that now and enslave them based on skin color. That was her start. That's her trigger in 1488. So when Columbus discovered America in 1492, he had all this land over here. In that particular time.
Yeah, water for you if you need.
Excuse me, thank you.
Yes, sir.
At that particular time, Europe was being decimated. Europe was under under problems. The entire European continent was being decimated with crime, famine, and diseases. They didn't know what to do in the late 1400s and early 1500s. And all of a sudden they said, since Pope Innocent says that we got some people we can use now as slaves, and we got
Take your time, brother. We here. We got time.
I know you all gonna put me out of here in a few minutes.
No,
you good,
man. We got time. They've been waiting on you for years.
You tell me a tale.
No, I'm not. People been asking for you for years. We got time.
Okay, I don't want to take up all your time.
No, you good.
Ain't no white man coming in here with a sign saying, "Oh, get him up out of here. He talking all this shit."
So when Columbus discovered America, they had all this land, and Pope Innocent said, use these people. Let's have a new form of slavery.